Preservation Board meeting for the City of St. Pete Beach. This is on April 2nd, 2026. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you give us a roll call, please?
Member Hurley?
Yes, here.
Member Young? Here. Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Here.
Member Daschle?
Here.
Chair Lowry?
Yes, here.
We have a quorum, and we ask that everybody speaks directly into their microphone. Thank you.
Okay, first on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Everybody had a chance to review it, and does anybody have something they'd like to add? Brandon?
Staff is just requesting rearrangement of a few items and removal of one. The owner of item 4B has asked that that case be pulled. The property just sold and the new owners will be representing that case, so that's a removal of 4B. We do have one of the applicants present for item 6A, so if we could potentially take that in advance of item 5C, which is amendments, which we did, that's the third item. Earlier today, we disseminated an interpretation in lieu of a change to the code, and we'll get into detail on that, but if we've passed those out, if we could just have that replace item 5C.
Okay, so we're doing 5C is being passed to basically being 5D arguably, and then we're doing 6A after 5B, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to the agenda?
I'd like to add an update from the Gulf Beaches Historic Museum.
Okay, we'll make that 6D. Museum update. Anyone have anything else? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as changed.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young? Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next we go to audience comments. Members of the audience, if you're here to speak specifically on something that's on the agenda, you can hold your time until that actually comes up. This is an appropriate time if you just have some general comment you want to make to the Historic Board. Now's the time to do that. Does anybody have a general comment they'd like to bring up? Okay, seeing none, we'll go forward to 3, which is approval of minutes. Does anybody have an opportunity to read the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the March 5th, 2026 meeting of the Historic Preservation Board.
I'll second that. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I think probably before we get to the action items on number 4, do we need to place people under oath? That's pretty much a routine thing that we're doing now. What the Madam Clerk's going to do is if you're going to testify or give information about something today, we want you to stand up and just take the oath. That's just become routine now. So if you plan on speaking, if you'll stand up and face Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the information or factual representation that you are about to give or present to the board is truthful? Thank you.
I can't say that. So,
Okay, I just got a note here from one of the board members who's having such a hearing problem. She can't hear anything from the podium. And so she's going to go ahead and leave, which still leaves us with a quorum of 4. So for the record, Holly's going to be stepping out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Holly. Okay, so let's go to action items. 4A is the local historic designation, case number 26040 for the residents of 3600 Bell Vista Drive East. Hi, Lynn. please.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's get this PowerPoint up first. Okay, this is a local designation request for 3600 Bella Vista Drive East, case number 26040. Applicant owner, Daniel and Debbie Bowen. And this local designation request is of a single-family residential structure. You can see that it is located on the water, and it's on a, kind of the end of a curve. And also the survey of the house. This is what the house looks like. I will be talking about its architecture in a moment. So the property owners are requesting a local landmark designation for their property at 3600 Bella Vista Drive East. The architecture form of this house is a general ranch type form, but with mid-century Spanish styling on the exterior. As previously noted, the residential Spanish influenced ranch style building was built in 1969 and is a masonry vernacular, which is a block house with an outer layer of stucco that helps create the Spanish influence and styling. The roof is terracotta tile, which further supports the Spanish styling. This property reflects the broad cultural history of the township of Bella Vista and predominant residential nature and embodies the distinct and visible characteristics of the masonry vernacular type of architecture, along with the ornate Spanish styling of the stucco over block exterior and the terracotta tile on the roof, which further enhances the Spanish theme style of this house. The applicants are not proposing to alter the historic use of the building as a single-family residential structure, nor any alterations or adaptive use proposals are being brought forward at this time. Staff has analyzed this house according to specific criteria and finds that this house reflects the broad cultural history of the Bella Vista neighborhood with a strong Spanish styling, and it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of a Spanish-influenced masonry vernacular residence in style, period, and method of construction. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have, or otherwise, I guess the applicant could come up and speak.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Lynn?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lynn. The Bowens, or either one, want to come up and speak? No? Okay, they're not present.
I spoke with them. They weren't able to attend the meeting. I did advise that if the board had any questions, we would ask that this case be continued to next month.
Okay. Would anybody have had any questions for them?
I don't see an issue with it.
I don't either. So it's pretty straightforward here. It's clearly old enough. It's clearly has some historic elements that are welcome to the area. We like to give historic designations when we can. So in that regard, I would make a motion to grant the local historic designation, case number 26040, for the residents at 3600 Bella Vista Drive East.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith,
Yes.
Member Daschle,
Yes.
Chair Lowry,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, 4B being removed, we're now going on to 5A, discussion items. This is a design review, case number 24095 for the residents, potential residents at 1303 Gulf Way. Mr. Berry?
Yes, so this is a resubmittal of a case that this board looked at earlier last year. It had originally come in late 2024. We do have the agents, Jenny Callahan and John Wolf, present for Audine Ross, owner. Property address of 1303 Gulf Way. This is a design review of a new single-family residence, originally reviewed, as I said, at the March 2025 Historic Preservation Board meeting. You can see the form study on the left from the 2024 submittal, the new submittal on the right. We have worked with our design reviewer, Tara Salmieri, and the applicant for well over a year now on the submittal. What is shown on the right, our design reviewer does find meets the criteria, the architectural standards for a new home in the Paso Roble Overlay District to the house medium standards. Here's another shot. You can see to the northeast on the left, and then the rear of the structure is proposed on the right from the alley. Here's some photos of other buildings in the vicinity. The two homes to the north on the bottom left, the vacant lot on the right, and then a slightly older Sable Palms Inn photo on the north, or on the top of the slide. Here's the site plan for the property. We have discussed with the owner the vegetation requirements at the front, and they do intend to meet those requirements. So for the design, the city's design reviewer has worked with the architects and finds that the current design meets the design requirements. There's a clear ground support for the upper stories. There is a clear secondary massing, common palette of design elements, gray stucco and brickwork that's shared between the floors. Those are some of the more recent modifications they made to the front facade of the structure, reflecting that stonework on the ground level as well as the upper story on the top left there behind the palms. There are voids in the structure as required, and there is a asymmetry to the facade. Staff had a few minor zoning comments. As I mentioned, we've worked with the applicant for about a year. There are just a few minor remaining comments. There had been a proposal to use some artificial turf. They have scaled that back. If used, it does need to be located out of swales. The pool deck appears to slightly encroach into the side yard. There's a slight cantilever on the north side that will need to be scaled back. And we did have a question about the total height of the building. It appears that it is measured correctly, but that is something that they are going to have to justify through the measurements that are submitted at the time of the building permit submittal. As always, the board may make comments that assist to ensure compatibility of the structure within the district. As this is a single-family use, there are no other form or mass limitations that are specific to this type of structure. So with that, as I mentioned, we do have the agents present if you have any questions about the design, and if not, we're happy to take your feedback.
Okay, I have some questions for you, Mr. Berry, and I guess if you could go to the elevations, because what I'm concerned about, and I'm sure you can answer, is based on something we're going to talk about later in discussion items, because this is a rooftop that's appears to be partially a flat roof and partially a angled roof. Is that accurate?
I believe it's all flat, but the agents can confirm.
So where are we as far as the height of the elevator shaft? The height of the elevator?
I believe the elevator shaft specifically is right about 32 feet. There is a parapet that does end at 28 feet. There is a safety railing that extends above that.
And so, and then we're going to talk about this a little bit later, and you know, please interject anytime you want. But so I know we've been talking about how on a flat roof, the absolute height is 28 feet. And so this is a design in which they want to go to 32 feet to fit the elevator in. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Correct. The elevator and the safety railing you can see in the right image there, those do extend up to 32 feet, give or take.
And so, if again, you know, some of the stuff I said we're going to talk about later. Pardon me. Would this, if the city commission accepts our interpretation of height, would this not be allowable under that accepted, if they accept that height interpretation?
Like you said, we're going to have a discussion on that later. Based on that, again, not knowing exactly where the elevator equipment is located, we don't have that detailed to the plans yet. The top of the elevator shaft might be an issue under that interpretation.
And I guess my question is, I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I know it's a little premature, let's say, but I know that in the discussions we're going to have later, we talk about things being in the permitting process and where they are. This has still not been permitted, correct?
Correct. This is not under permit review.
And this is just more for the, as we talk to the folks here in a minute, you know, I may want to talk about that and find out if they understand where that could potentially be and what we had discussions about and why we might have some problems with that overall height. So unless you have something else to add, that's why I had thought there was some relevance to bringing that up, to see if this is something that, you know, eventually they have to change again, or they could talk about doing that now or whatever. So you haven't had a conversation with them in regards to that, I assume.
No, this is all something that came up very recently. So it's, and typically what was drafted for your review today, the commission can accept it or not. It would allow for those that have gone through design review and building permit review, complete an application to utilize the current interpretation. So if that's extended to design review, it would encompass this case. But again, that really just comes down to a later discussion.
Okay, so this one's still in limbo then, for lack of better words. Is that fair to say?
We haven't received a building permit for it yet. This is the design review, the continuation of the case that started early last year. So.
And the other one we're looking at today too, same scenario.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Berry?
And as far as the height goes, it doesn't matter if it's elevator carriage or attic access or whatever the structure is. If there's a structure up there, then it has to be counted in the height, right? Doesn't matter if it's elevator or otherwise.
So that's what we're hoping to clarify today. The challenge that we've consistently run into is that the standard for the 28 feet is to the top of the parapet of the flat roof, and that this structure does comply with that. The top of the parapet is 28 feet above the measurement starting point. The challenge is with the elevator and the safety railing, those do extend above, not to exceed 32 feet. So we're hoping to get some clarification on what is, if anything, is allowed in that 4-foot span.
As I recall, a case we had on Pass-a-Girl Way around 27th Avenue, where there was the question of adding an elevator for rooftop access, and I think we had issue with that. Not sure how those folks would feel if all of a sudden we agreed to let it happen at another property and they were not allowed to have it there.
If I recall, that case went for variance because they were looking to exceed even the 32 feet. I don't think it was a challenge with that.
For the moon roof, for the
Correct.
buyer and the wheelchair that never bought the house.
Right. Yes.
And again, that was different because it included the elevator on going up to the top floor. It wasn't the mechanicals for the elevator.
Right.
Correct, and we're going to further discuss this later, and I just think, you know, when these folks, I don't want to summarize the later discussion at all, but, you know, the bottom line is what do you do between 28 feet on a flat roof, which is the absolute height maximum, and 32 feet, which is the height maximum on a peaked roof. Do you allow in those 4 feet things to be like elevators, which is not a elevator shaft or is not a chimney, it's actually an occupiable space. And so then we have these maximum height flat roof buildings that have essentially added another floor over the 28 feet. And, you know, that's always, we've talked about the interpretation of that. And so, you know, we're getting more and more of these where it's a flat roof and they want to put the stuff on top of it up to 32 feet. And the question is, should that be allowed, or is that a violation of the height limitation? And, you know, when you look at it from the street, it kind of looks like more than, not that there's a limitation of 3 stories, but most places aren't more than 3 stories, and we've got a higher situation from that. And I'll save some of that for when we talk about the discussion later, but for the purposes of what we're doing right now, I just wanted to bring it up because it could have some relevance and when we talk to the folks. Who did you say was here representing, are the owners here or the?
No, the owner's not present. We do have the two agents for the case present, Jenny Callahan and John Wolf.
Okay. Do you folks want, either or both want to come up to the podium and please state your name and business address or whatever?
Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Callahan. I'm one of the architects that worked on and this is John Wolf.
John Wolf.
Hey, Mr. Wolf, how are y'all? And Jenny. So I don't know if you understood what I was just talking about at all or not, but we've been having some discussions lately about clarification or the proper, let's say, interpretation of height on Paso Grill. And just so you know, that I'm not trying to be a bad guy about any of this stuff, and that's okay.
Don't move.
I know, but I can't.
Okay.
It's broken, so I can't even read this anymore. So in Division 20, which is what the Paso Grill overlay is in, and I assume are they building this under the overlay or under? Okay, so you are familiar with the overlay, and that's part of what the historic board were created to, obviously as part of this division to be able to try to enforce it or at least have some involvement in this. And one of the things they talk about is, if you're building another overlay, you've been given some less restrictive setbacks because it's in the overlay, right? And the reason those less restrictive setbacks are there is because of the historic nature of this Paso Grill in the historic district. So we're obviously supposed to be very cognizant of historic homes and other things. So, essentially you've taken advantage of having a better setback because it's in a historic district, all right? But part of that we have to do in the purpose and intent of the overlay is when we talk about existing structures and additions, that's one thing that the historical homes we can talk about, but they also say, and new development that is consistent with the existing mass and scale within the district. Okay, so we're very cognizant of the existing mass and scale within the district. And I don't believe that means compared to new houses, it means to the historic district. So we're getting more and more homes that are built to the absolute maximum height, and then they want to add things on top of it. And personally, I think that's not the correct interpretation, but it's also kind of a violation of the spirit of what the historic district is supposed to be about. And so one of the things we're looking at now is, like in your scenario where you've taken a flat roof, which is maximized at 28 feet, but have had an elevator on top of it, and so now you have 32 feet, which isn't a roof, it's an elevator. And your design has, you can probably answer this question. What's the ceiling of your first floor? You know that?
On the ground level? Or
Yes, the ground level.
9'4".
Okay, and then what's your ceiling on the second floor, or the first living area?
The same, 9'4".
Thank you.
And is that the same on the third floor or the second living area?
The third floor is 10 feet.
Okay, and so our concern, or my concern, would be that you have pretty high ceilings and you've maximized all that and then added on the top of it, if you didn't have that 4 extra feet between 28 and 32 feet, you couldn't have your elevator up there unless you decrease the heights of your ceilings, which you could do. So you've made the choice to pick those numbers and then get it up to the actual maximum and then put the elevator on top of it. And I don't mean to, we're going to talk about that later today, but we have a concern for that. And so it's possible, I guess, and Mr. Berry can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but this is an interpretation that think we're going to talk with the historic board, but the staff and the attorney and ultimately perhaps the city commission would agree that the recent interpretations, perhaps that have allowed elevators to go up to 32 feet, for example, might not be the way it's going to be interpreted. And you're not in permit processing yet, or that hasn't happened, so it could affect your design. I think. So I just want you to be aware of that, and if you have any comments on that, that's fine, but if you don't, we can just kind of move forward. I have some other questions, but.
Sure. I think one thing to note on this design specifically is it is an elevator overrun. So we're not raising the elevator to provide access to that roof deck. It's an elevator overrun, so it's enough space to get the machinery up, and then the roof system above that.
So
we're
there's
also
no-
providing a door at a lower landing that complies with that building height so that you can actually get up to the roof deck. And then we're doing a parapet around mechanical equipment on that level.
Gotcha.
So we're trying to follow.
Okay, well, I couldn't tell that from the
Spirit.
plans. Yes, so when the elevator door opens, you're not on the roof.
No. No, you are on the third floor.
Okay, and so the difference between the 28 and 32 is just the mechanical of the elevator? It's that high, 4 feet?
Yeah, it's an extension of the shaft and a swing door, a man door, to step from the stair landing to a platform outside. Then you ascend the stair to the upper level. So we tried to stay within that maximum.
Okay, well, I didn't realize did that, and that's certainly,
We're
you know.
trying to
No, okay,
obey the
beautiful.
spirit of the approval.
Good. Not lecturing. Okay, so you've got, so from the landing, when you get on your elevator, you have to take like 2 or 3 or 4 steps to get to the roof?
No, you have to ascend a stairwell to the roof,
That's what I mean.
a full level. You have to ascend the level to the roof. There is-
It lands on the second living level, and then they have a full stairwell that leads up to the roof.
yeah.
Okay. And so I guess I'm going to say this again. So there's a full-on 5 feet above the elevator that is
Essentially.
mechanical?
Well,
Seems an awful
it's
lot.
a continuation of the shaft and then the roof structure above that. Being a flat roof, we're spanning with, I think, the 16-inch floor system on top of that. So man door happens at the mid-span landing of the stair. So you ascend half of the level, step out to the landing outside, stepping out and down so that water doesn't come into the door, and then you continue the stair. We do have a set of plans here if you.
Yeah, I'd love to, because I'm still stupidly confused, I suppose. I can't visualize it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you look at the space here, essentially on the lower, jump there first. So on the lower level is the last,
And that lower level, you mean essentially the 3rd floor, the second living
yeah,
floor?
second
space.
level
Okay, right.
is the last door for the elevator. Then you ascend this stair.
Mm-hmm.
As you get to this level, you then come to a landing here, step outside, ascend the remainder of the elevation.
I get
And
it.
there is no elevator door on that level.
And you have it a little bit raised because of water flow and that kind of thing. You don't want water going down into the
I
elevator.
don't want water going through that space.
All right.
So,
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. That's very illustrative. Now, another thing I'm going to ask, is, back to what I said, and I don't know, you don't have to answer these questions, but this is a very modern design, and I'm just wondering, being that it's in a historic district, I mean, do your owners, have they ever lived in Paso Grill? Are they going to live there? Do you know? Or are they just going to rent it out, or do you have any idea?
this is their retirement.
And do you know if they've ever spent any time in Paso Grill? If you don't, that's fine. I just wonder. Because, and that's what we're here for, just to kind of encourage some things. And I know you've done all this work and stuff, but this is a modern home in a historic district. And I'm just wondering, even though maybe you can build it, why build it? I mean, do the owners have any idea that this structure is really significantly different than the historic district? I mean, I know it's difficult for you to answer, but I need to ask these questions because that's what we're here for.
I know they've been working on this home for many years now, so I know they came to this meeting multiple times over and have had a lot of communication and effort going into producing this. So I know this is the intent. I know it's in alignment with the new residences in the area. But
Well-
to your point, that's not what we're talking about.
Well, I understand that, and I appreciate the fact, yes, there's a fairly recent building that has a lot of similarities to this, to some degree, and, you know, I just wonder the motivation sometimes, because if we just keep building new homes like this, we're not gonna have a historic district, and we're gonna lose all the uniqueness and charm of that neighborhood, and I wonder why people buy there to build these if they can just do it someplace else. And I know you can't answer that because you're not the owners. But, you know, it's like, and frequently we don't have the owners here, so we don't know how they really feel. They may be from out of state and don't even know anything about Paso Grill. You know, I don't know. But let me ask you a question. On this, the one that's up here now, this, I guess it would be the southwest corner of the building. Is that like the prow of a ship that comes out at a angle away from the building?
Comes out at an angle vertically and away from the
Yeah, to the southwest leg.
Not in, if you're looking at the front elevation, it's flat.
Yep.
So it's just coming out on the side elevation at an angle, if that makes sense.
But yes, what I mean, it's like I said, when it's like a prow of a ship, it comes out, whereas the front of the building, our house faces west, all right? That piece actually faces to the west and to the south too.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then directing out to the water. Actually, we brought it out so that we could carry the front facade and have it terminate into a vertical element that kind of folds over that second story mass, so that we do have that holistic design where this element is affecting the massing of the structure, and it kind of becomes this intersection of two folded planes that kind of nurture one another.
No, I appreciate the architectural sweat that was put into designing that. I think it's interesting, just as, you know, in the historic board, I'm just questioning the historic nature of it, which it doesn't have any, obviously, and of course, can't make you build what, you know, what fits into the neighborhood. I'm just questioning because, you know, we get more of these, and I'm just concerned about the future of the area if everything becomes modern and is a modern look. So, okay, well, that's my little story for the day. Anybody else have any questions with these folks?
Is the structure as far west as the home to the north of it? Or is it set back a little?
I think they're both complying with that 20-foot front setback and the Paso Grill extension for that lower level. So we're utilizing that area for our pool deck and our building entry with the stoop and the kind of patio area on that lower level for that main entry. But if you look at the modeling there, you can see in the background a mass, which is the structure.
I was looking at the wrong place.
And I know that structure is quite a bit further west than the one to the north of it on the corner. Just wondering if this new one is in line with the house on the corner or the one just adjacent to it to the north.
I think it's in line with the one adjacent.
Yeah, I can answer that. The one on the corner, 2 up, was built under the underlying zone, so therefore it didn't get the advantages of the reduced setback that you get building under the Paso Grill overlay.
And then it lost its view to the south when the new house was put up.
Correct. And so what we're getting is, you know, people wanting the overlay so they can get a bigger house with a better setback and then building a modern house. So that's the part that sticks with me, is the spirit of what we're supposed to be doing there is really not being followed, in my opinion. And that's something that, you know, we're trying to rectify a little bit with some of the changes we've talked about. But That's the problem, is you've got a house who built under the, the underlying zone, and now their whole view's gone. Of course, every new home is going to be built under the overlay, even if they didn't have to, because it gives them a bigger footprint to build a home.
If I may,
Yeah?
just for a moment. So if you look at your first floor, this is that setback area,
Mhm.
It's right around here. As you go up levels, knowing that the house to the west is built to that front setback.
Not the west, to the north, you mean?
I'm sorry, to the north.
Yeah.
Was built to that full setback.
Mm-hmm.
We have intentionally reduced the building enclosure here and introduced transparency in the corner to kind of respect the structure to the south.
Which-
So this area is all open.
Right, the south is the one-story Sable Palms, right?
Exactly.
Which really is a historic building. So they don't even have anything that high that would look through that part. Maybe in the future when somebody builds another house.
Right. So we intentionally took the building footprint and stepped away from that setback at the front. We did carry it forward on the right side if you're looking at the looking away from the home, because that structure to the north is to that 20-foot, but we tried to respect that setback there as well. This also carries to the next level above, where we've introduced transparency and the lanai outside of the common space on the second living level as well. So if you look at the renderings that are on the screen,
Mm-hmm.
there are basically two boxes in that folded mass that introduce more transparency at that corner so that we are not feeling like this structure that's really coming up to that 20-foot setback. While we do have that plane that folds up and around, it is full of transparency on the side so that it does. Should be able to take advantage.
Well, I would say I do appreciate the attempt to open that up a little bit, although, I mean, I'm sure people like to have some outdoor seating as well anyway, So whether that's done to benefit the neighbors or to benefit the owners, I'm not quite sure. But,
I'm sure it's a balance.
yeah. So, okay. I mean, I understand your design and how it fits within what's, capable to be done at this state. Anybody else have any questions?
Is there a pool on the property?
Yes, that's on the front, the second level. Essentially, it's in this position at this.
So in the front?
In front.
So it's on the second level, it's not at ground level?
The top of the pool is at the floor level of the.
And that's what is encroaching into the side yard setback, Brandon? That needs an adjustment, or no?
I think it was architectural feature of this impression, correct? This cantilever piece.
It's just that small cantilevered piece on the, correct. It was, I just noticed that when I was going through the review, but it's a very minor encroachment. We can work that out at permitting.
Yeah, and it doesn't come down to the ground either.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me ask you just a couple more questions. And this may be a question for Mr. Berry, is, so we have the parapet's at 28 feet, and then we have a railing above that, right? Okay, and what's the height of that railing that goes around that?
It's just, I believe, just under 32 feet as measured.
Yeah, it's a 36-inch opening on the front of it. But basically, on that area that you have access to.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right, appreciate it. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
So we don't need, I mean, it's just for purpose of design review. Anything that you want to tell staff that we need to have them check into or whatever, or is that, can we move on to the next one? Guess not. So let's go ahead to 5B, which is the design review case number. Someone, you notice I broke my glasses a second ago, so I can't see very well. I know it's the 205 Gulf Way, but somebody give me a case number here.
26050.
Okay. Mr. Berry?
Chairman, what magnification do you have?
Oh, you got, whatever you have. Thanks.
So this is for 205 Gulf Way. It's a new single-family home built to the house medium standards. Frank Frey is a phrase designed for Deborah Martin, DAAJ Investments. This is the first time this board has seen this design. So this came forward for demolition back in February of last year. The proposal, as I mentioned, is for a new single-family home built to the house medium standards. You can see here the front and the rear elevations of the home as proposed. This one has a split roof design. There's a slanted roof at the front, or sorry, at the back. The front is a flat roof with a parapet and a railing. I can see the left elevation here. Here's some photos of other structures in the vicinity. You can see the vacant lot, of course, with the palms in front. You can see the structure to the south as well as looking to the north. The city's design reviewer found that the design review elements were met. The required elements were included in the design. She did have concerns about the visual emphasis placed on the stairs, which de-emphasized the porch massing created through elevated deck variation at the northern frontage. You can see that on the left side of the rendering. There was a recent development that had come forward to this board that had a similar element on the north side of it. It was a little bit smaller of a lot, but that this has a similar porch balcony extension element on the north side of the structure. This one does also have these stairs coming off the front. She just had some concerns about, especially with the setback of those elements, that being viewed as the significant massing at the front of the structure instead of the porch itself. She did find the other elements to be met, the vertical and horizontal visual support. They've actually extended that stonework a bit above the ground level, so that helps to integrate the upper levels of the residence better with the ground level. There's a common material and color palette, particularly the stonework and the cement siding, and the facade elements are shared as well. Staff had a few comments for zoning, just that there be a full landscaping plan required at time of submittal. They had referenced the requirements, but we're typically looking for species and shrubbery types. We had trouble determining if the height standard is met. I did just contact the applicant about this shortly before the meeting. I don't know if they've had a chance to look into it, but I can try to answer questions on that if needed. The parapet is limited to 28 feet from 8 feet above grade. The measurements that were provided were for primarily the floor height. I had scaled off the design and it appeared that the parapet was about 32 feet above the measurement starting point. So that is something just based on the plain interpretation of the code, not even getting into what we're talking about later on today. The parapet would need to be scaled back in height to 28 feet. And also the hex pavers of the frontage should be preserved or replaced. This is on a section of Gulf Way where we do want to make sure that those hex pavers are preserved instead of going with the concrete stamp design. So that's really just a note for the building permit review. So as always,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me just clarify something on the hex pavers. We're talking about in the sidewalk, right?
correct, yes.
Well, is it up to the builder the home builder to put in the sidewalk?
So typically, if there is no hex paver sidewalk at the frontage, we require that the sidewalk be replaced and be replaced with the stamped hex sidewalk. But with those out there, we actually just recently found a supplier for the 16-inch hex pavers. So we want to make sure that those are preserved. They're not damaged during construction.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is, I can get how you're asking them to preserve them so they don't get damaged by equipment and stuff like that. But it's not up to the homeowner to replace the sidewalk. The city's doing that, right?
So under new development, the city does ask that the sidewalk be replaced with the hex stamp when required.
I know. At
By
whose
the
cost?
builder owner.
It would be at the applicant.
Oh, okay, so.
It is not the city
city's
replacing.
not paying for
No,
it.
sir.
That, just for clarification, I get it now. Okay, very good, I understand.
So with that,
I have a bigger question. Why are we offering a curb cut on Gulf Way?
I don't think they are they?
Yeah, they are. That property was originally accessed from the rear of the structure from the north. It crossed across the property that was
So-
just north of it. Now they're asking to do a curb cut on Gulf Way.
There's a different rendering that shows a wall across the front and a pool where those big pavers are on the right side. There's a pool in another rendering in this package, isn't there, Brandon?
I believe so.
There's a
I don't-
picture of the pool in the plans on the right side, but on the left side, they're showing a driveway coming all the way out to Gulf Way.
They can speak to that, but I don't believe that's the intent. You can see at the bottom in this image, and it does cut off. It's a little bit hard to see, but there are those elements on the street side of the sidewalk, which I don't believe there's any intent for there to be a curb cut, but
I think
the,
there's a pedestrian gate there.
Okay.
And a sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
not a driveway.
so with that, happy to take any comments from the board, and we do have the agents present for this case.
Well, before we get to them, so we don't know if they've met the height requirements.
Correct. It's the top of the parapet measures approximately 32 feet above the design flood elevation. They do have the option to use the 8 feet above grade standard due to the height of the lowest level, but the parapet of the flat roof portion of the structure appears to be at 32 feet, which just based on the code, it would be limited to 28.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, so shouldn't they be bringing this back to us when that stuff has been done and been corrected, so we know what we're really looking at?
We can, just like with the prior case. As I mentioned, I just discussed this with the applicant a few hours ago. So this is our first pass at looking at the plans. We just wanted to present it to you and get your feedback.
Okay,
So
I'm not trying to scold you as far as being, it just seems like their plans are incomplete. I don't mind us looking at it at this point and making some suggestions or whatever, but I think ultimately we're gonna have to see these again. Is that?
well, they can if they do find that it meets the height limitation, they can possibly explain. As I mentioned, it doesn't have the actual zoning height standards on the plans at this time. We do have the floor heights in the packet. That was the set of plans that was sent out with the agenda, but it doesn't actually provide the measurement. I did try to scale it off myself, but they could potentially speak to what I just brought up.
And like this last one, does this have, this is a combination of a flat roof and a slanted roof? Right?
Correct, yes.
And do we have an elevator that goes above 28 feet? How do you get to the flat roof, I guess?
There are stairs, and I can show you on the left elevation here. They align with this. Do you see that there in the
Yeah.
center of the structure?
So right in the center of the building, we have stairs that go up.
That's correct, on the north side, I believe.
And so and this isn't a cutout, but that's the north side, you're saying? It says
Right,
left
standing-
elevation, but I assume that means.
Standing on the north, correct.
And so that roof line is not complete all the way across. It's got a cutout with where the stairs and there's a fencing area there. Is that right? Or is that a cutout that's showing what's behind the roof? I don't think it is, but.
No, I don't believe it's a cutout. I believe this is the actual
I
looking
think-
to the south
I think
elevation.
you'd see the railing from that elevation if you were looking at the side. You'd see
That's
it
what
going
I'm
up
asking.
the
I
stairs.
assume that was the case, right? But, okay, so if you want to get up on the roof, you get off on the elevator on the third floor and you walk up the stairs to the flat roof. And I assume the top of if you look at this, the top of the roof is 32 feet, not the parapet. And then the parapet right now appears to be at 32 feet, but should be at 28.
Correct.
Okay. And we have some folks here, you said?
I believe so.
Hi, please state your name for the record.
My name is Fancy Renard with Phrase Design.
Okay. So I guess you've just been listening to us talk about this height stuff. Can you illuminate us all on that parapet
Yes, so
issue?
I think we were thinking we would be under the 32 height because we do have the peak roof here, but from what I'm understanding of the previous project and this one, that even the parapet, you're saying would have to go down to that 28
Yeah.
max, correct?
Well, when we talk about a flat roof, I understand this is a bit of a hybrid, but
Yeah.
we're trying to have some consistency what's going on, okay? A flat roof the maximum height is 25 feet, and that includes the parapet,
Okay.
okay? So whether you have a 1 foot.
Chair Lowry, I apologize. To the extent you're going to advise on what the interpretation is, I think that we should handle that discussion item first
Okay.
before advising on what the standard, the interpretation of the standard to be applied is going to be.
No, that's not where I'm at.
Okay, I just wanted to,
I understand. Mr. Berry, please illuminate us on what the height is for a flat roof by code.
So by code, the top of the parapet of the flat roof cannot exceed 28 feet. Now, with these plans, we don't have an exact location for 8 feet above pre-fill grade, so they are eligible to use that standard. That might be more favorable than the measurement that I started out when I was reviewing the plans, but it may work out in their favor. I just don't know if it would account for the 4 feet.
I'm talking about the flat roof height and parapet is right out of the.
That's directly out of the code, correct?
I'm
That
not
is
interpreting it just exactly what it says.
correct. That is what it says, yes.
And so, yes, I don't know if that's going to make a difference in the way you do this or not, but I think you had said, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but you thought the 32 feet kind of controlled even potentially on a flat roof or the parapet of a flat roof. And
Yeah, I was thinking because we did have a peak, we have a combination, obviously.
Right.
And I was under the impression that it was 32 feet to the top of the peak, which our top of peak kind of lines up with the parapet we created as
Right.
well. So, and again, we just got this feedback about the height a few hours ago, so
Yeah.
we haven't been able to dig into it much
Okay.
yet.
Okay,
But
okay. Anybody have any questions about the design elements or any other thing about the case?
I do like the coastal design. Can you confirm that there is not a curb cut on the west side?
correct, yes, that's just a walkway to
It
the
was
entry.
It was the way the flare was at the end of the sidewalk that threw me off.
Understood. It's a wide walkway too, so.
Thank you.
Yes, I do like the way you've got the roof and the supports underneath. It's very nice. And one of the things, and this may be a few for Brandon as well, we have these comments from the design review that says they have concern about the stairway. And other than just saying we have concerns, do we do anything with that? You know what I mean? It's like, I look at this and I can understand how they say, the stairway is kind of front and center and kind of takes away from the whole look of the house. And, there's many designs where they put the interior, the stairway in the interior because, you can have a foyer that's not, on the ground floor and it hides the stairs. And so I don't know if anything's been done in the plans to speak to that or rectify to that, or it's just a concern we have that we just put on a piece of paper and just forget about afterwards,
So I did speak with the agent just before this meeting, and currently the code does allow for additional landscaping to compensate for some of the frontage requirements. We did speak, and there is a plan to, put vegetation in the front of the stairs there, which I think will help with some of the screening.
Height. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, all right, that's a good answer. Sure.
The basis for that comment was effectively that typically we want the home to be set closer to the street, but we also want that secondary element, the porch or the stoop, to be the element within that
Okay.
front 10 feet. So that was really the basis for that request. In this case, it's the stairs, so they could compensate with landscaping, unless the board has another concept.
Can you go to the slide that has the front rendering with the garden wall?
I may not have an. Can we pull up the overhead?
Oh, I didn't even see those. That's an interesting one.
And there's another one that shows it kind of from the sidewalk where you actually see the garden wall across the front. And Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I thought there was well, there's got to be a wall across the front because of the pool, a wall or fence, so.
I don't think I brought that one. We've done multiple renderings and working through the design.
And these colors look much darker than the ones that we have.
Printed a bit darker, yes. We are still trying to finalize what stonework we're going to be using.
And so back to what we were talking about a minute ago, the vegetation, this grouping that we have in front of the stairway, we're talking about putting something with more elevation to it. Is that right? Okay.
Can we talk about the height restriction for the fence across the front, fence or wall across the front? So because of the pool, we're seeing a lot more pools in the front yard. We don't want to see a lot more 6-foot fences in the front yard.
So they will need to put the gate latch up at 4.5 feet, but they would be allowed to have a 4-foot wall that meets the Florida pool code. So that would comply with the standards, and anything taller than that in the front 10 feet would need a variance, so it wouldn't be something that we would administratively approve.
Okay.
And can you go back to that picture right before that one that you showed us?
Yes.
So I'm trying to focus on the rooftop there, and because of the clouds and stuff. So we've got that on the right-hand side. We see what would be, I guess, the fencing for the flat roof, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then right in the middle, is that like a white wall that's right there?
On the left-hand side?
The left, it'd be right in the middle of the building, but the left-hand side of the
Yes,
fencing.
there is a peaked roof right there. From this angle, you can't quite see it, but that would be directly to the left of the fencing.
But does the top of that wall that's right there, eventually, is that the same height of the back of the peak roof?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so that wall is kind of like an angle.
Yes, correct.
Okay. But that wall, just for Brandon's, that wall we think might be at 32 feet though, right?
Yeah, we're at 31.4. We measured it after we got his comment on that. So, to the top of the parapet.
So, okay. I don't know I don't know if that's, Mr. Berry, would that be a situation, even though it's got a wall that's going over the 28 feet, is that considered like an architectural feature, or would that be just the height? You know, I'm sorry to ask you that, but you know, that's the problem with this hybrid roof scenario. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, does there have to be a wall there, or could it also just be open space? You have to have a wall there. Is the wall potentially too high because it's part of the flat roof?
So the building code does require a barrier. I believe it's 3.5 feet on the roof if it's going to be used for occupiable space. It could be a railing. I think there are other features that could be substituted. The code specifically says a parapet is limited to 28 feet. So with the preceding case we saw, they did have a safety railing that extended above the parapet, but the parapet met the 28 feet. Safety railing extended above. So.
Okay, well, not to parse words, but a solid wall, I would say, is a parapet.
I agree with that.
So that is over 28 feet as a solid wall.
There are parts of it, I believe, that exceed 28 feet, yes.
Okay. Well, I guess I would say, and anybody else have any questions for this lady?
Could that wall be lower and still meet the safety requirements?
We could only take it about a foot lower than what we currently have it, to be at that 3.5, so it still wouldn't get down to 28. We'd be off about 2 feet.
Well, see, and this is what brings up a thought that I was having earlier is, you know, I assume you all designed this house to take advantage of your maximum ceiling heights on each floor. Okay, and so therefore, this issue of what's over 28 feet is a result of you going to the maximum heights of the floors below.
Yeah.
And because we're concerned about height in the historic area, where historically it was one house, you know, 1-story houses, 2-story houses. Obviously, when FEMA came around, you had to add a floor to everything, and that's changed the overall look. But now we're like talking about having stuff on, which essentially is creating part of a 4th floor, because we have, you know, people want to be up on the rooftop. Why, I don't know. They're going to find out fast enough that it's not very comfortable up there. But And to me, it's like we're having this argument about these 2 or 3 feet that could be rectified by your floors being lower. And so, you know, it's like we've created this issue that we seem to have conflict at by accepting the fact that you're building it to its maximum height. Whereas if you, I mean, I like to say, in your garage, you need a 9-foot or 10-foot garage. It's just storage. What are you going to put in there, you know? If you lowered your garage to 8 feet, does that suddenly take care of that problem about what we're doing on the rooftop? And so, you know, that's obviously something we're going to be talking about later this afternoon. But I just throw that out for discussion today, because I think you can tell from where we are, we're going to have to come back with some of these changes so we can look at it again, and maybe those will all be rectified at that point, or we can discuss them at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, does that make sense? Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I would just say that visually, and I'm having a tough time for whatever reason with this iPad, but
Yeah, mine's-
the first image that we have in our PowerPoint or the packet, the agenda packet, it shows, it doesn't show the pole, but you can see the side. I would be curious to see kind of a visual of the other side where there will be the exposed stairwell, just because of the neighbors, obviously, you know, to the south of it. I would be interested to see what that'll look like
Definitely.
for the next go-round.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you for listening to us. Okay, so now we're moving on to, which 6A out of turn, which is find information items on the hardship variance number 25043. And for 2004, and I guess, is that just 2000?
It's unaddressed. Currently, it does have a parcel number and it's part of the plat, but it just doesn't
Okay.
have an address.
Case number 25043. Got it.
So the alleyway in question, this is a request that will be moving on to the Board of Adjustment at the end of this month. It went for technical review yesterday, which is the staff level review. And this is particularly a variance to section 20.19 of the Land Development Code, which prohibits alleyway vacations in Paso Grill. That was one of the amendments that was passed by the City Commission back in early 2017. You can see the alleyway on the screen. It's between 21st and 20th Avenue. It abuts a small shopping center to the north. To the south is a parking lot currently used for the Red, White, and Booze restaurant. To the northeast of that parking lot, you can see the survey of it on the right side of the screen. It's a 15-foot wide alleyway. It runs west to east. It terminates at the properties that front along Gulf Way. And then, of course, there's the H pattern to the alleyways that's common throughout the other avenues in this area of Paso Grill. And what's shown on the screen there in the red box on the image on the left side, that is the only portion that is requested for vacation. The north-south alleyway to the west of this is not requested to be vacated.
Say that last thing again.
So the north-south alleyway to the west of the
Oh, the
area in red,
north-south alleyway,
there's no request to vacate that. So there are two applicable standards in the code. The first is the one to which the applicant is requesting a variance. That's effectively states that alleyways shall not be vacated. The other standard is actually out of the city's charter. That is the process for vacation of a right-of-way, which is that any alleyway that is dedicated to the public, which is usually through a plat process. This plat, the Phillips Division, was originally created in 1913, I believe. So this is a request to vacate that, I believe, one of the last remaining west-east alleyways that connect from a north-south alleyway to Paso Grill Way or Gulf Way. I know there were several that were dedicated, never necessarily used. Those have been vacated over time. This is one of the few that is remaining. It of course, is an improved west-east alleyway. Those requests do need to move on to the City Commission. That's a request that the City Commission would hear. It would not be through the Board of Adjustment. It does require a supermajority, 4 of the 5 commissioners, to approve a vacation of any alleyway. So I just want to go through next steps on this. This is actually a 2-part process. The hearing is to the standard that would allow for this request to be made to the City Commission. The Board of Adjustment would not approve the vacation of the alleyway. They would authorize, effectively find that a hardship is present, that this request would be able to move on to the City Commission. This item is a quasi-judicial item. If it moves on to the City Commission, that is a legislative item that would be handled separately. If this item is approved by the Board of Adjustment, if the applicant chooses to move forward with this request to the City Commission, that is an item that under Resolution 2023-04, we did note the Historic Preservation Board would be eligible to make a recommendation to the City Commission prior to their review of that legislative item, that being the actual request to vacate the alleyway. Only the City Commission has the authority to grant that approval. So if this item is approved by the by the Board of Adjustment to move on to the legislative request, that is an item we would bring back to this board to make a recommendation at that time. For this item this afternoon, we are only presenting this as an information item. We wanted to let you know that it is an item that is being considered. So with that, we do have one of the agents for the case present. I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Well, first off, I appreciate your explaining the procedures. It makes it a lot simpler for, how we move forward and stuff, because the bottom line is we may be involved in getting making a recommendation, we may not. So again, this is for information, but I did read through it, and I just had a couple questions that I think you can answer. If not, the agent probably can. I know it said that the current building that's on the north side of the alley was a foot from the right-of-way, I believe.
It's hard to see, but it's approximately a foot. You can see the outline of the building there, and it's about a 1 foot setback from the property line.
Well, okay, my question is, do you know if that foot setback, and you may not know the answer, is the bottom of the building? Or because the roof has about a 1 foot overhang that goes to the south?
It's typically measured to the wall of the building, so I believe the eaves do hang over to either the property line or potentially slightly more than that.
And do you know, because that building was just redone, at least the exterior, which I assume they had to get permits on, do you know whether or not that roof line was extended that foot, or whether it followed the original building plan?
I don't know about the roof line. The agent might be able to answer that. I do remember speaking with the architects concerned about the wall of the building because they were adding some cladding on, and we did work through that during permitting. They are eligible for a 0 foot side setback here. That is the allowable setback for a commercial building in the overlay. So it's not an issue with the wall of the building, but they can potentially speak to the eave.
So I didn't know that. So they're allowed for 0 setback. So if they say there's a hardship, it's too close to the alley, they're allowed to be that close, or closer even.
They are eligible based on the building type, yes.
Okay. And when that building was redone, which was still in the process, I suppose, but I think the outside's been completed, how did they deal with the issue of the right-of-way during construction, if you know? Did they ask for some sort of permission to block the alley off, or get some, something through the city so they could work on the side of the building there and not be standing in the alley, which seems to be a hardship?
That was never reviewed by planning and zoning, at least. We typically see the right-of-way permits. There might have been an agreement with the building department, which the agent should know.
Well, I think depending on where this goes, that's some information that would be interested to find out, because, as I said, that's part of what they say the hardship is right now, but they clearly went through that hardship building that building without too much problem. And then also, do you know, or does the staff know what was there in the past? I mean, I think a building was built, early 60s or something like that?
It sounds about right.
I think the property appraiser puts it early 60s, which isn't always accurate, but we probably need to find out if we have those files when it was actually built. But considering it was platted supposedly in 1913, there's a good 50 years almost that probably some structures were there. I mean, I've seen some maps that show what some of those are, but I think that would be something that would be ultimately very relevant to either the Board of Adjustment or the City Commission about what was there, because there has to be some history why that alley lasted as long, or why it's been there for 100+ years. Also, the other thing I'd like to ask is, one of the other hardships they say is it's a 15-foot alley. Are you aware of any alleys that are wider than 15 feet in Paso Grill?
We have a few 18. They're not common, but we do have a few that are 18.
As far as east-west, aren't most of the alleys 10 feet?
Most, I believe, just west of here is still 15. As you go further south, they do narrow down to 10.
And there's an issue about the hardship of the maintenance. Are you aware of this? Is this alley in any worse maintenance than the other alleys on Paso Grill?
I don't know about in comparison. He did submit some photos. There is some, significant degradation to the pavement in this alley. So
Was it stated as a hardship to the maintenance of the alley or to the maintenance of the building?
She's asking, but I think it was both.
So I believe and the agent can speak to this, but I believe part of the narrative had to do with the condition of the alleyway and the effect on the abutting properties.
Yeah, he can speak to that, but it's really both.
Are there any utilities in the alleyway now?
Yes, so there is, this is something that staff recently permitted on the south side of the alleyway, just adjacent to the parking lot. There is a utility line, Duke maintained line, as well as a pole. The agent did submit letters from all of the utilities that we typically ask for vacation authorizations from. I did submit them all yesterday. Duke was the only one that did not provide the no objection. A few of the others provided it conditionally, but they did state that if the city were to pass a resolution for this, we would need to approve it with a utility easement in place. So there would need to be a utility easement maintained through that location.
So does the power pole obstruct the use of that alley now anyway? Is it not navigable? It's not used by trash trucks or emergency vehicles?
Because, yeah.
It is navigable with a passenger vehicle. I believe it's about 2 feet away from the property line, so there's probably about a 12 to 13 foot clear width.
But the dumpsters are on the adjacent lot anyway, so it's not like they would use that for trash pickup regardless.
Correct. It opens into the parking lot, the doors on that.
And if I'm not mistaken, that same east-west continues to run down behind the homes, correct? Heading towards Gulfway.
Correct.
And those are all still city parcels, not vacated, correct?
Correct, right.
So this section is the request to have it vacated, but the remainder is all city. Got it.
It's essentially 15 feet by 100 feet, right?
That's correct, yes.
And do you know whether or not, if it was separate property owners on both sides, whether that makes a difference? Vacate if there's two separate owners?
You can both abutting property owners can request to vacate. What typically happens, and this is throughout the state of Florida, if a right-of-way is vacated, each abutting property owner gets half. So it's 7.5 feet.
And in this particular case, I mean, I would say it's obvious, but I don't think it really ever says it. The person asking for this request is asking that property be given to them.
That's correct. It would be the city gives up its fee interest, I believe, in the underlying right-of-way, so that we would effectively say we do not need this for public purpose anymore. And in this case, I do want to clarify, it is the same individual representing both LLCs, but they are owned by different LLCs on both sides of the, yeah.
And is there anything that would prevent, if this was vacated, them joining those properties together?
Not joining them together. There would, of course, potentially be an issue with building based on how the utility easement is written. If there's any kind of pedestrian or other kind of easement that's still maintained in that right-of-way, or what is now a vacated right-of-way, that would potentially dictate what could be built. But in terms of joining them, not necessarily, so.
Okay.
So if one property owner to the north who's requesting gets half of the vacated the alleyway, and then the property owner to the south is then forced to take the other half, what if they don't want it?
They would typically make the application together. That's, I don't know if there's ever been a situation where somebody forced them to take half.
I've never, they'd certainly be an interested party, and if one applicant tried to do that, I've never seen that happen before.
I think the point being that we don't get these unless people own both sides of the property, really. I mean, I guess you could have an agreement.
And I think there were a few in Gulf Way. The last of the ones on Gulf Way were vacated in the early 2000s. I believe that they were under different ownership, but they both applied at the same time to receive that 7.5 feet.
Which ones are you talking about?
I can get the exact number. I believe it's somewhere up in the 20s along Gulf Way. There was one that came forward in maybe the mid 2000s to be vacated. Now,
West Alley?
it wasn't an alley. It was platted as a 15-foot right of way, and it was vacated to the
22nd and 23rd.
Correct. I believe that's right.
Because there's still a north-south alley that only goes halfway
Right.
into a house. That's right. Okay.
And there were, and you could see it in the plat that was uploaded. There were dozens of these down in Paso Grill. They've all been vacated over time. Of course, most of the north-south have been maintained, as well as the center of the H between the houses.
And I think this is just, again, depending on how this evolves, I think that's a very interesting thing that the commission would need to know is, I know we've got a plat from 1913 that shows the east-west alleys going to all the way to Gulf Way and all the way to Paso Grill Way. And my understanding is that was the second grouping of platting for Paso Grill. I think it was like between 12th and 22nd, and they started expanding a little bit. I think it's very important to note that there was no cars on Paso Grill until 1919, so it really wasn't the same concept that we have today. But if you look at the property appraiser's maps, it shows all those east-west alleys that go to either Gulf Way or Paso Grill Way being VAC, which I assume means vacated. And I would assume the city has some history of when that might have happened, because I don't think there was ever anything, I don't think they were ever utilized, as alleys. In fact, may have been platted that way, except for up where this occurs, because that was a commercial center that had a whole bunch of different buildings and stuff there. And so there was a reason for alley to be used at that point. And so I would assume that the persons that are going forward with this would like to be able to tell us the history of that alley and how it has been used, since this is a historic district and we're not really concerned about making things modern. I know they said that a typical alley is 20 feet in modern world. Well, okay, this is a 110-year-old alley in a historic district. So anyway, I'm just saying those are things that I think will be, we need to, if it goes that far, there needs to be some more research into some of those items, because, there was a reason for that alley historically. Anyway. Okay, anybody else have any questions for Mr. Berry?
I'm good.
Okay, does the agent want to come forward? Please state your name for the record.
John Sapir with Randmar Development.
Okay. And you heard some of the questions I asked Mr. Berry. Do you know any of those answers offhand?
Why don't you start with your questions?
Okay. Do you know what was there along those alleys, let's say, before that building was built?
No idea.
Okay. And so if I know you've suggested, so if I get this straight, there's a hardship because the building is a foot away from?
Approximately.
Okay. And you can't do maintenance on the building? That's the other reason?
Well, you're approximately 1 foot from the right-of-way, so future maintenance. The question is, how do you get to the building?
Okay. Is there a process that you're aware of with the city where you can get an alley closed off during maintenance, like put orange cones out and that kind of stuff?
I'm not aware of it, but I'm sure there is.
And do you know what, if the alley is vacated, what it's proposed to be used as?
It would stay the way it is. That's the proposed use.
No changes? It would just, except for there was something about a hardship to maintenance. Does that mean you would then maintain it to be a more level surface?
Yes, yeah. The hardship was the maintenance of the building.
Right.
Also, the other additional is the deterioration of the alleyway, which has been torn up, patched back together. There's some pictures on the back of the application. It's a mess. It's actually dangerous. And the owner, as Mr. Berry had said, the owner owns both sides. It's under different LLCs, and he is willing to resurface the alleyway so it's at least a flat surface.
But its use would just be pedestrian,
Correct.
so you wouldn't be parking cars?
I'm not aware of
If
any.
you know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, this is just information.
Sure, yeah. No, I truly have no idea.
So if the city were to come in and just repave the alleyway, that would take care of the hardship? Because it was the deterioration is the concern?
Well, that was one of the hardships of it. The being so close to the building, also our concern is with cars going by, you're 1 foot away. If somebody's trying to make that turn to, if you're heading westbound, make the turn to the north, I guess, clipping the building, so on and so forth. You're just so close, and should I don't want to use trash truck, you admit. It's an inside joke, I have a feeling.
They don't anymore.
Yeah, those vehicles are so large, and to make the turn, and it's just dangerous. So, using the alley going north and south, coming off of 20th or 21st is so much more safe. And then also cars trying to get on, going down the alleyway, heading east, trying to turn onto Paso Grill Way. I've done it. It's very dangerous because you have a stop sign right there at 21st. Cars are backing up. People are going through the stop sign. So, just for a life safety purpose of that, you eliminate that that alleyway there in the right-of-way for people coming out. It's probably going to be a lot safer along Paso Grill Way, too.
Are you aware there was a place there called Gennaro's for a very long time? It was a pizza place?
I saw it, and I Googled the address, and I think the picture of the pizza place did come up.
So they were there for forever.
Okay.
Wonderful family, owned and operated place, and they were packed all the time, which was great. So there was cars that were parked there all the time.
In the alleyway?
No, in the parking spaces in front. And they maintained their business, and they had people coming and going literally around the clock. And I don't believe there's ever been I haven't looked at any of the records, from City of St. Pete Beach and then Sheriff's Department to see if there was any accidents or anything. But to my knowledge, I don't think that there's ever been anything, thankfully, knock on wood. So I'm just curious, again, for the hardship purpose. I don't
Okay.
have any other questions.
Yeah, I think we're, just like I said, this is for information purposes. We, had some questions. Obviously,
Sure.
we may get involved again later, depending on what's going on. Anybody else have any questions of this gentleman?
No.
Anything else you'd like to say? Or anything
No,
else?
no,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going back to 5C, which is amendment to ordinance 2025-07, clarifying height limitations for residential development in the Paso Grill Overlay District.
So we significantly modified this item for this hearing. This was published as potentially a code amendment we wanted to talk through with this board, but we did meet with the city attorney earlier this week. It does appear that we can at least propose a correction on the interpretation of the height standards in Paso Grill. So I handed out a revision which gave a draft of what could potentially become an interpretation. I know we had the design reviews earlier, and they gave a pretty good introduction to this, but the challenge that staff has is not what is allowed for a flat roof structure. It's clearly 28 feet from the measurement starting point. There are two options that are available to applicants. The issue is more what is allowed over the 28-foot parapet, top of the parapet, top of the flat roof, whatever it ends up being. There is an overall 32-foot height limitation, and for sloped roofs, that is clearly 32 feet. That's to the ridge of the roof. 28 feet is to the midpoint of a hip or gable roof. But the flat roof is where there's a little bit of a challenge. I know it's something that we talk about frequently through design reviews, just generally as staff communicating with the board. So if we could pull up the presentation. Get back to it. So what staff is proposing, and we talk a lot about flat roofs, but a lot of times the roofs you're looking at aren't exactly flat. There is some kind of a pitch to them. But in the code, it also specifies that it's not just a flat roof structure that's limited to the 28 feet with the parapet. It's actually a low sloped roof as well. So consulting with other staff, looking at the building code and other references, architectural references, we find that a reasonable slope for a low slope roof is one with 2 to 12 or less.
And does that mean every 12 inches it slants 2 inches?
Correct, 2 inches up.
Yeah, I did major in this. Go ahead.
There was a recent project where there was a fourth floor, and it actually wasn't totally flat. There was a pitch of, I believe, 1 to 40. So there was still a pitch to the roof. It was just very slight. So that would define what a low slope roof is within the application of this standard. So, as we already specified, I don't think there's any ambiguity that the maximum height from the measurement starting point, whichever of the two options is used, to the top of the parapet of a flat or low sloped roof is 28 feet. That is written clearly in our code, and I don't believe there's any ambiguity in that. Where we run into the challenge is that there are multiple other references in our code to what is excluded from the height limit. We have the Land Development Code Division 2 height standard, which is applicable everywhere else in the city. It's applicable on 8th Avenue. It's applicable in the city's downtown, but it's not applicable in Paso Roble. We do have a definition specific to Division 2, to Division 20, that is applicable specifically to the overlay, which is where the 28 to 32 foot height limit comes from. There is also Land Development Code Section 7.2K, which does explicitly state that non-occupiable features are permitted above the roof line. And it does give examples of what those features include. It doesn't give all of the items. It does state that other similar non-occupiable rooftop appurtenances are permitted, but the type of features that it allows and that we would interpret to be allowed to exceed the 28-foot height limit would be things like spires, cupolas, belfries, antennas, water tanks, ventilators, chimneys. It also does specify elevator shaft enclosures, but I believe the discussion we've had is whether or not that accommodates the actual landing for the car within the enclosure. Is it really just the mechanical space that would be permitted within that 4-foot limit? And then it does, like I said, get into other similar non-occupiable rooftop appurtenances.
Mr. Berry, can I just interrupt you for
Sure.
a second? Just because I want to be clear when we talk about some of these things. Like when we say a cupola, I mean, I know what that is visually, but it has a roof, but that's a architectural feature that would be so small people wouldn't be standing in there.
Correct, and it does state specifically for this standard in section 7.2K, which then the following sentence in that standard says, these are elements that are not allowed in the overlay, but this does not say that. So
like when we see belfries and we think, oh, there's someone, they're ringing the bell. I mean, they aren't those size. These are just small architectural features that people aren't in.
Correct. It's not intended for human occupancy. Someone may get into it for maintenance, but it's not intended to be occupied in any recurring basis. When a home has a roof that is partially sloped and partially flat or low slope, the 28-foot height limitation applies to the portion of the roof that is flat or low slope. That came up with the design review today. I believe that was effectively already applied. That is our interpretation. We would just want to make that clear if that's something that this board and the commission supports. This interpretation would not apply to homes with sloped roofs of greater than a 2 to 12 pitch, as if that is the standard we go with, which maintain defined limits of 28 feet to the midpoint, 32 feet overall from the starting point utilized. I feel that that is clear. I don't believe that there's any ambiguity in that standard, just like there's no ambiguity in the 28 feet to the top of the parapet of the flat roof. Where these issues come up is what is allowed as an overrun above the 28 up to the 32 feet. That is where I think there's been some challenge to the consistency of that interpretation. And a lot of this comes up now, and I know we've talked to this board about this in the past, but we haven't historically seen homes proposed to be built to the height where this comes in to be an issue. We do have some homes, I believe, on 13th Avenue that were built historically back in the 80s at a 4-story height, but we, even when I started here in 2018, we didn't typically see homes that were this tall. Now it's an item that comes up on a recurring basis. So we agree that there is a need to either have a code amendment or an interpretation that we're consistent on. And with that, you have what we passed out. Happy to take any input, answer any questions.
I have a question. The last meeting when we brought this up, the question had to do with a non-occupiable roof space. However, it was a large space, which begged the question, how much space do you need to have in this unoccupable storage space on your roof that is also 6 to 8 feet tall? How can we limit that? How can we somehow address that it's an non-occupiable roof, whatever, not to exceed 10 by 10 or?
So that is what was published with the packet, but this is even stricter than what was published with the packet. So we were looking at, if we were to use the term habitable, because there's, and not to get into too much detail, but habitable is defined by the building code, and it includes spaces and it excludes spaces that would typically still be occupiable. So storage areas are not habitable space, but I would consider them to be occupiable space. You can go into and occupy a storage unit. So based on this interpretation, storage would not be allowed above the 28-foot height limitation. So that would not be something that would be permitted in the future. It's not a question of habitability, it's a question of whether it can be occupied.
So fourth floor storage units, for example, that go to 32 feet would not be allowed.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what happened in the last case that we discussed.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what precipitated some of this stuff. Just as arguing, like you said, a elevator that has a car that goes up to 32 feet isn't allowed either.
Right.
So I understand it, and I think this was clearly was, if you read all this stuff, the intent of everything in the past. But one of the things that I think, Brandon, and correct me if I'm wrong, so today the historic board is being asked whether this is something, this interpretation is something that we agree with, okay? Staff, I think you've said this, staff has already basically suggested that you're comfortable with this or you're okay with this interpretation. And the city attorney has said that as well. And so the next step, I believe, would be going, if we agree that we're all in unison, that this is essentially the correct interpretation of that would go to the city commission for them to confirm that, right? Or decide there has to be a change to the code itself. Is that my understanding?
They could always propose that, and I would certainly think for something like this, we would want to eventually codify it. We have Senate Bill 180. Unfortunately, that's not being amended this year, so we have some limitations, but this is an interpretation. I do want to be clear that the city attorney did say, of course, we could still be open to challenge on this, so it's not, that doesn't render us immune from that, but this would be something that we would carry forward in lieu of code changes to be consistent on this.
So can you further put some size limitations on these elements like spires and belfries?
and I don't mean to answer for them, but I think those are just gingerbready architectural features that really, I mean, none of them can really go up in their limitation anyway.
There would be 32 feet to the over, so they would be allowed in that 4 foot. In terms of the square footage, as was mentioned, if they're occupiable, so if you have a very large cupola where there's stairs leading up to it, I believe that would fall under occupiable space, and we could potentially prohibit it under that grounds, but I don't know if we could add standards.
Adding any dimensional standards that aren't already in our code, I believe would raise an SB 180 risk.
I don't know if it's a practical application where someone could build a cupola and hang out up there because it's occupiable, and even if water tank or a spire or those things that are in 7.2K, there's still an absolute limit on those. Is there not? I mean, can you have a spire over 32 feet?
No, that would be the highest point of any element.
Right. So these are just, like I said, gingerbread kind of architectural features that no one can really be in, that would be able to be over 28 feet, but no higher than 32 feet. Right. Is that?
It does. I'm just trying to avoid the possibility of somebody putting a lovely belfry on top of their home and being allowed to do that. You hang a bell in it and you've got a beautiful rooftop deck. There's got to be some sort of a definition somewhere that is not open to interpretation. And
so with that, and this is where we really work with the building department when we review new homes. So they would need to have some kind of access to that for it to be a definitive deck space. It would either need to be an elevator or stairs. In certain cases, when it's clearly not in use as a occupiable space, the building department does allow for a hatch with a ladder. It needs to be a permanent fixture, but we would not allow a hatch with ladder up to a space intended to be occupiable. If it's being used as a roof deck for anything other than the storage of mechanical equipment or other features like that, there does need to be some permanent element, and this would not include stairs that overrun, so that would somewhat regulate that height of that feature.
okay. And if at some point someone decides to bend the grace that they were given and use that space, are there any repercussions? Once it's done, right? Can't make
Maybe
it
a code
down.
enforcement issue, depending on what our code says.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I understand your concern, but I think this is all couch and architectural features, right? That aren't occupiable.
Correct.
To be allowed in the first place. So if you want to put a cupola, it's got to be something small on a corner and no one does it anyway, I suppose. But you could do something like that, and there's maybe a very, very small child could go in there, but then they'd have to get access to it, which they don't really have, like you just said.
Something else I wanted to bring up with the board, and this is a first draft. It's ultimately up to the city commission how this is applied. However, we had drafted that this would become effective for any project that is applied for after the date of the interpretation being accepted by the city commission, excluding those projects that have submitted for a building permit. That's typically standard, as well as those that have undergone a completed design review. So the ones that have been accepted under the code, they have met the standards as they're currently applied. They would move forward at that point in time. They've typically brought on an architect. They've spent quite a bit of money designing those plans, so they would be allowed to move forward. Those projects that have not gone through that process, that have not submitted for permitting, they would be subject to the standard.
So it would behoove us to implore the city commission to hear this as soon as possible, right? And so is that something we could get on a calendar in 2 or 3 weeks? Is there any notifications that we have to put out? I mean, I know city commission meets every 2 weeks. It seems relatively simple what we're trying to do. And with the number of demolitions and new homes being built, sooner rather than later.
We do need to meet with administration on this. We put this together in a very short period of time, so we could look at it.
Try to do that is all I'm saying, right? Yeah. Well, I guess in that regard then, of the members here, do you agree that this is the interpretation that should be going forward? Or maybe has existed but now has been rectified?
Yeah, I
As
think,
much as it can be without causing another issue with SB 180.
Do we need to have a vote on that?
I was going to say procedurally, maybe the best thing to do would be have everybody go individually and say whether you support recommending this interpretation to the city commission.
Right.
I would also like to just add, if it's possible to do maybe like pictures or examples of what each of these would be, just because then that way for the area of interpretation, you know, maybe it would make it a little more black and white instead of fuzzy to say, this is what we're talking about when we say a spire or a cupola or a belfry.
And so the water tank doesn't look like a hot tub.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Open air water tank.
Or an aquarium.
I had that
Why
thought.
not?
Right.
I agree and I disagree. The problem is that's going to take time and effort to start putting together photographs and doing things of that nature. And to me, I think we need to, it's fairly, maybe later on we might want to do that.
Or as a supplement to our design guidebook.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, something like that. But for the purposes of getting it in front of the city commission, I don't think we should be, looking for that kind of thing.
I would say the sooner the better to get it moved forward.
Well, so let's all say what you think. Is this something,
I would say I would like to go forward with it to the city commission with a recommendation that they adopt it.
Okay, and I'll say as well that I think this is, the correct interpretation. I think it should get to the city commission as soon as possible so we can go forward.
If I may, are you also in agreement with staff's, as far as the timing, being that those that have not applied for a building permit and part of design
The
review?
last thing that Brandon said, I don't know if we have any authority to make it do any other way. I assume there's a kind of way of doing business, right, that you all kind of, and so my understanding is, so obviously if no one's done anything yet, I'm not concerned with that. For example, the design review you looked at earlier today, if that became an issue, are they far enough along that they can't be affected? And what's the cutoff is what I'm saying.
And that is what we're trying to
That's
establish.
what I'm saying. So what we know, what was the word you used? If they've had a completed design review, I understand that. But where's the other, between the completed design review and putting it in for doing nothing, where are we,
I think we have some flexibility on this. It's clear when it's an ordinance change, when it's an actual code change, where the cutoff is. If they apply and it's complete prior to the code change, they are vested under the prior code as long as they keep it current. But with an interpretation, it's a little more ambiguous. That is one of the things we need to discuss. So we're trying to.
And so I'm going forward, let's say, with the recommendation for its work that this does not require a code change. Okay.
Correct. We're not looking at a code change.
No, you're not. So now we're talking about the people who maybe put in plans. If they have not been completed, then their plans could be changed by this interpretation. Once the city commission, if they say, yes, this is the interpretation, right? And
If
you're
that-
asking whether or not those can be vested.
And I think we have to speak to the city attorney's office and kind of clarify, because it's a change in interpretation that
Sure, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel I'm not really comfortable trying to say what
Yeah.
you should or shouldn't do. I mean, clearly, if it's been complete, it's been complete, and I don't think it's fair to go back in time. And I mean, I'd love to say to do that, but I don't think that's fair to do that. So it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and that's why I'm suggesting we get in front of the commission as quick as we can, because then we will have less of those issues. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. It's I just want the board to be aware of that in the instance of the cases that we had before us today. If that is where we land, that they would not be subject to that.
And that has the support of the city attorney.
I'm sorry?
And that has the support of the city attorney too, what Brandon described.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm not trying to upset that apple cart now. So does that answer your question, though?
It does.
Okay.
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we need to hear another country, just be heard from, since we, I think Sean and I have both said that we think that this is, should go forward as it is, and Chloe suggested that, or the city attorney suggested that we should all individually give our feelings about it.
Yeah, I agree with moving forward the way it is. It's the best we can do right now under our constraints, so it's a move in the right direction. I would support this.
I would also agree, and I would add that I think in the design guidebook, there needs to be examples of what is outlined as far as what's not allowable and what is a non-occupiable feature, and not allowing that area of interpretation.
We need a glossary in the back of our design guidebook. This is getting to be such a big book.
Well, okay, well.
Here's an example of
With
what is
that,
not
that
appropriate.
segue
Habitable,
into the
occupiable.
Design guidebooks.
You got historic plaque program.
You have everything.
Are we good on 6A?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then we're going to, thank you everybody, to 6B is historic plaque program updates.
Yeah, so just give a quick update on that. We have gone through our historic designation list and had to go through property appraiser, and it looks about there is 94 properties that letters will be going out to with the application. We're still putting the finishing touches, but at least we have attached the designation number to who the current owner is, and at least that stuff is done going forward. So there's a good number. And actually added, 95 with today's.
Today.
I'm going to tell you that I think that is awesome that the city is picking it up in that fashion and sending the letters out. That makes it so much easier for a lot of people to ask those questions, and so I'm glad to see we're kind of get some finality with that. That's good.
And for the plaques, is that also for commercial properties?
Anybody that has a historic designation, it will
Right.
be sent to. There is one thing that went in my head and out at the same time. Just going forward, once that is officially reinstated, once we give their letters out after they've been designated, that will go with the package as well. So
That's great.
Nice. Okay, great. All right, 6C, design guidebook update, if known.
So we're starting to look at some of the architectural vignettes. I'm trying to get everything together so I can send it off to this board. I know that you had requested the information as soon as we have it all packaged, so we can get that ready for review at one of these meetings. So I will be emailing it out as soon as I have everything together. It's still a little bit of a work in progress.
No, and Brandon, you do so much, obviously, and I know it's onerous at some point, but obviously we've been talking about this for probably over a year now, and that's what's happening. So I would also say if there's anything, I don't know if you need help with anything, I would certainly be available to help you, or maybe some other board members if it's a manpower situation on some of this stuff that doesn't require much brain power, So, yeah, I'm just waiting. I'd love to have it done. Okay. Anything else? All right, I think that covers everything, does it not? So,
Gulf
60.
Beaches Museum.
oh, I'm so sorry. That was on my other piece of paper that I added that. Okay. Yeah, 6D, the museum update.
Yeah, so I wish I had more news on the progress of the rehabilitation of our building, but the rehabilitation of the documents and the artifacts is going really well. So they're all in a safe place. I think we might have our next meeting or the meeting after at the place where all of our goodies are stored. But we do have the Gulf Beach Historic Museum Sunset Cruise and Egmont Key Tour coming up on April 11th. That's from 6:45 to 8:30. It's a nice little sunset cruise. You'll do a toast at sunset out at Egmont Key. It's $75 for members, $85 for not yet members. And we do have a nice display out in the lobby here now from the museum, and I had some brochures to put out there, but they're all gone, so I'll put some more out, which is nice. If you're not a member yet, it's so cheap. It's embarrassingly cheap. If you're not a member, you should be embarrassed. So there's also going to be storytelling and a 50-50 raffle. So it's on the Facebook page, on the museum website, or you can call me.
All right, very good, nice. Anything else? Okay, our next meeting is May 7th. Does anybody have any conflicts at this stage they can tell us about? If not, okay, otherwise, we are adjourned. Thank you all.